Who invited her here? Tae Xian laughed loudly, pointing at the woman who had just entered the gym. She doesn't even seem to be able to handle the heat. Laughter echoed through the hall. Some students turned away, others exchanged glances. Nádia Ferreira heard everything, but did not respond. He simply continued adjusting the worn gloves he was wearing. His face remained calm. His silence seemed to irritate those who expected a reaction even more. "Is she lost?" asked Bruno Castro, crossing his arms. "Maybe he came looking for the reception area." Another student mocked. More laughter. Nádia took a deep breath. That place was not unknown. In fact, every wall of that gym held a memory she could never forget. 5 years earlier, she had entered that same hall carrying a dream. At the time, she was shy, insecure, unprepared, and full of fear. But she had enough courage to try. On that first day, however, almost everyone looked at her the same way they were looking at her now. As someone who didn't belong there, she perfectly remembered the laughter, the comments, the looks of disdain, and above all, the feeling of returning home, believing that perhaps they were right. Perhaps she really wasn't capable. Perhaps he was never strong enough. Perhaps she was never good enough. He believed this for a long time, but life had other plans. "Hey, did you hear the question?" Bruno insisted. Nádia looked up. "I heard it." "So, answer." "I'm exactly where I need to be." The simple answer made some stop laughing, but Tassian continued to provoke. "What's with all this confidence? Maybe she watched some videos on the internet and now thinks she's an athlete." The class burst into laughter. Nádia remained silent, because no one there knew the nights she spent crying. No one knew the pain, the defeats, the attempts, the falls. No one knew how many times she almost gave up, nor how many times she heard that she wouldn't succeed. The clock marked the start of training. Coordinator Marcelo Viana had not yet arrived. Meanwhile, the students began their warm-up exercises. Tatian continued to observe Nádia, waiting for some mistake. Some stumble, some sign of weakness. But that didn't happen. Nádia executed each movement calmly, without exaggeration, without trying to impress, just doing what was necessary. "Strange," murmured one of the students. "What? She seems to know exactly what she's doing." Bruno heard but ignored it. His pride wouldn't allow him to admit it. Shortly after, a sequence of heavier physical exercises began. Running, push-ups, functional circuit training, jumps, resistance training. That's when some expressions began to change. One student gave up, another asked for a break. Another sat down to catch their breath. But Nádia continued without complaining, without drawing attention, without seeking applause. She just kept going. Tatian wasn't laughing as much anymore. Bruno didn't seem so comfortable anymore. But nobody said anything. Then, the gym doors opened. Marcelo finally arrived. The coordinator walked to the center of the room, observed everyone present, and smiled when he saw Nádia. "It's good that you managed to come." The phrase immediately caught their attention. Bruno frowned. Tatian was confused. "Do you two know each other?" someone asked. Marcelo looked at the group. "Of course I know you." The silence began to grow. Nádia remained still, showing no pride, not provoking anyone. Marcelo then took a deep breath. "Before we continue training, I want to introduce someone to you." Tae-Xian still tried to laugh. "She's new here." Marcelo shook his head. "No." The gym fell completely silent. Nádia was here a few years ago. Now nobody blinked, and she came back today because I specially invited her. Bruno felt a pang in his stomach. Tae-Xian was expressionless. Marcelo continued. "When she first arrived here, she faced difficulties that many can't even imagine." Nádia lowered her eyes. She was judged by her appearance, underestimated, discredited, and almost gave up on her dreams. Some students began to understand where the conversation was going. Others just remained motionless. Marcelo then showed a photo on the gym screen. Nádia appeared wearing a sports uniform at a competition. Then another, and another. The entire room was in shock. State competitions, social projects, sporting events, awards, volunteer work, overcoming challenges, victories, all built over years. No shortcuts, no privileges, no easy applause. Just effort, a lot of effort. Bruno could no longer look at Nádia. Tatiana felt her face burn. The same people, those who had been laughing, couldn't even lift their eyes. Marcelo then said something no one expected. I invited Nádia because she is the greatest example of perseverance that has ever passed through this academy. The silence became even heavier. Today she didn't come to compete with anyone. She didn't come to prove she's better. She didn't come to seek revenge. She came to show that giving up doesn't have to be the end of the story. Some students began to applaud, first timidly, then more loudly, until the entire room was standing, except for Bruno and Tatiana, because the two were fighting against shame. That shame that arises when we realize we were wrong, when we judge someone without knowing their journey, when we confuse silence with weakness. Shortly after, Bruno walked over to Nádia. Everyone watched. I was wrong. His voice came out low, sincere. I'm sorry. Tatiana also approached. Her eyes were teary. I didn't know. I know that many people today need to get to know someone first in order to respect them. Nádia replied. Even so, I apologize. Nádia smiled. There was no anger, no desire to humiliate anyone, because she had already overcome something much greater than those people. She had overcome herself. Is everything all right? He replied. The important thing is that we learn. Marcelo watched that scene in silence. That was precisely why he had invited Nádia. Not to demonstrate physical strength, but to demonstrate character. At the end of that day, no one was fired, but everyone left changed, because the shame they felt didn't come from humiliation. It came from awareness, and sometimes that's the greatest lesson anyone can learn. Before leaving, Nádia had one last word to say. You have no idea the burden someone has carried to get where they are. The room remained silent. So, never laugh at someone's beginnings. Perhaps you are looking at a person in the exact chapter preceding their victory. Some wiped away tears. Others simply reflected. And that night, no one forgot those words. Because true strength wasn't in muscles. It was in the ability to keep going even when the world told you to stop. As it is written in Isaiah 40:29, He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the Stories of Faith channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Also, comment on which city or country you are watching from. I read almost all the comments, and I'm very happy to know that there are subscribers following these stories in different parts of the world. And remember, never laugh at a fight you didn't see. Never underestimate a journey you don't know, because someone's greatest victory almost always happens long before the applause arrives.